We live in a twilight world and there are no friends at dusk. So today is a rainy day, which is good. It means I can, well, I'm not going to go down to the beach today. I'm going to make some videos for YouTube. This is like the first rainy day we've had in about 2 weeks, so yeah, man, I'm kind of relieved. Sometimes it becomes hard work having to go to the beach every day and be a beach bum. It's nice to have an excuse to not go to the beach and to, make some videos for the Patreon and for YouTube. And yeah, I'm going to put this in the illusion warfare category, and it's going to be, I'm going to call it the riddle of the tank. Because one thing I've always kind of not got or not understood is why now in 2022 are we still using tanks? Because these things were around in World War One. In fact, they were actually invented in World War One, and the whole purpose of the tracks was to get over the muddy grounds of France in the winter. Obviously, the tracks, they spread the weight and they can go across mud. Also, they could go across barbed wire, and they could also go over a trench. Now, obviously, if this was humans, they would obviously get doing the same thing. The humans would get stuck in the mud. Then they would have to try and cut through the barbed wire, and then they probably couldn't jump over the trench with their equipment on, so they'd have to go into the trench, and they'd have to get caught down in trench warfare and trench fighting. So the tank was like the invention to overcome trench warfare, and it was apparently very successful in World War One. But we're not really using trenches anymore. Trench warfare is a bit of an old thing, and we're here now in the year 2022, and let's be honest, the military-industrial complex has spent a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of years and research into weaponry, new technologies. We always hear the controversial kind of like figure of how much money is going into, black budgets and future warfighting research and new weapons technologies and everything. And, trillions every year. Trillions by the British, trillions by the Americans, trillions by the Israelis, trillions by the Russians. Yet somehow we are still stuck with the tank. Now, the tank is kind of useless, and we've just had it for so long. And, I've always wondered, the riddle is why, and I'm going to get to that in a second. And the other one is the howitzer. The howitzer was used in World War II. The howitzer, the artillery gun, the field gun, the cannon, it's the same principle, isn't it? It's this big, bulky thing that fires a projectile into the distance. And, yeah, it just astonishes me that we're still at that stage. But once you kind of like get your grips around what warfare is and how it's all an illusion and how the people at the top are on the same side, it kind of makes a bit more sense. Now, going back to a tank, right? They're pretty useless in warfare because all you got to do is throw a Molotov cocktail that anyone can make. And that's it. The crew are fucked. The crew will get burnt alive. A tank, what does a modern tank cost? $63 million? Plus, anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 crew members, highly trained. Plus the amount of engineers you need to look after the thing and maintain it and have the skills to fix a tank. And especially the equipment to do it in the theatre of war. It's a very kind of crappy weapon. It's also very loud. It's not very fuel efficient. Most of them are carried around, on the back of a lorry. They're carried into the theatre of war onto the back of a lorry. Now, I'm sure people in the military will have a good argument to why they're needed. And obviously the reason is going to be they hold ground. And obviously they're probably quite good against machine gun fire and whatnot. But I guess it depends which way you look at it. Now, the main thing is they are fucking intimidating looking. And as I just said, they are loud and scary. And that's exactly why they will always be used. The whole idea, if you want to convince the people there's a war going on, you've got to have things like this rolling down the street. Big, loud. Everyone's got to see it. You can't just have a bunch of SAS guys go in and kill the enemy and be in and out within an hour, because that'd be no good. No one will know it's happened. One thing I really want to drive home is the whole purpose of this illusion warfare concept I'm presenting is that I want as many people engaged and believing it as possible. And that's why you need this kind of weaponry. Big, loud, everyone's going to see it. And when it's rolling down the street, you can't ignore it. So you might be in an area where there's no war going on, and yet the media is saying to you, yes, your country's at war. Oh my God, they're coming to kill you. Fear, 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 death, 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 war, war, war. And you might be sitting there thinking, well, I'm looking out my window, nothing's really going on. Then this fucking thing rolls down the street. And even though it's not engaged in any fighting and it's not firing any weapons, you cannot ignore the sound of a fucking tank rolling down the street. And especially, for the kids that grow up in these zones, in these, fake war zones, this is going to become a very, very real memory to them. And of course, if we fast forward like 50 years into the future, when they start to make documentaries about the fake war as if it was a real war, that we're all going to be dead and gone, but the kids that grew up in it are going to be alive and giving their accounts. And you can picture it now when they're doing like an interview, like, what was it like for you growing up in Ukraine? They'd be like, oh, I remember the tanks rolling down the street. I'd be with my mum going to the local supermarket, and then I'd see a tank coming in the distance. Now, think how scary a tank must look for a little child. As well as your mum and dad, shitting themselves. That's if your dad hasn't been drafted off to go and pretend to fight somewhere, and it's just you and your mum. And now your mum's obviously falling for the propaganda, blasting through her TV, phone, laptop, whatever. And now her fear is now getting passed on to the child. And it's, of course, generational trauma. Regardless of if a bomb, any bullets fly, any bombs land near you, if the fear is there of it actually happening, it's still going to have the same kind of psychological and spiritual and energetic effects on the person, and especially the children. We're getting into the territory of epigenetics. I got it out there in the end. This is where kind of your characteristics gets passed down the line. So if you are believing that there's a war and having the fear within you, it's going to get passed on down to your children. So yeah, that's why they will always be using tanks. I don't care. We can fast forward to the year 3000. They will always have these because it's all about scaring the humans into participation of fear. And that's what it's all about. I mean, I queued up a few pictures here. There are kids on YouTube making laser beams, like homemade laser beams that can actually, they fucking work. They can cut through brick. I watched a few of these guys' videos, and they're like 8 years old. Some of them are 8 years old. Like, you watch his first one on that, and he has to put on practically like welder's goggles to block out how bright this beam is. Because if he didn't put them goggles on, it'd fucking blind him. Now, you telling me that a kid can make this, but a military industrial complex hasn't made one? Come on, let's be realistic. This is a handheld one, and he's still got to wear these massive goggles because it'll blind him. Now, you're telling me they haven't thought to strap one of these on top of a tank? Or make a rifle version? They just beam it down the street and blind everyone? Of course they have. They got this, my friends. They've got it. We have to be very realistic about what they've got. But the thing is, it's not a genuine war, and it's never a genuine war, because all the secret unknowns at the top are all on the same level. They don't give a fuck about Russians. They don't give a fuck about Ukrainians. They don't give a fuck about British people. They don't give a fuck about black people. They don't give a fuck about Muslims. None of that shit matters to them. They want everyone living in fear. That's how they're running the game here. They need everyone in fear so they can continue domination. So they don't want to sort this war out and win it effectively straight away. That would deceive the whole point. They want to drag it out as long as possible. They want it to be as noisy and as loud as possible. But here's the kicker. I know this is hard for people to understand. They are doing their best. The secret unknowns are doing their best to make sure no one is dying. Let that sink in. They are actively moving people around so no one is dying. And of course, people are dying. People die every day. I think they say it's around 6,000 people die a day in work-related injuries. And as we know from the scamdemic, it's not hard for them to just, someone fell off a ladder and guess what? We can put them down as a scamdemic death. Same's going to be in Ukraine. A guy could fall off a ladder and they'll put it down as a casualty of war. We've seen them do it now. We know how the game works. People die every day. That's part of life. But most of the NPCs, they don't really give a fuck how many people die, because they're so busy watching Love Island and Netflix and garbage in their brains that they don't really care how many people die a day. It's only when the media kicks in, the MK Ultra media mind control device system kicks in, that suddenly it makes them aware that people are dying, and all we have to do is add a few scary images of ambulances and pie charts and bar graphs all in red and scary pictures of tanks, and then next thing you know, these NPCs and normies suddenly care about how many people are dying a day, and it's on their little robot brain, So yeah, they want this war dragged out as long as possible, and they don't want no one to die. I'm pretty sure it'd be very, very, if there was a genuine kind of issue between the West and Russia, I'm pretty sure the West could go and, get to Moscow pretty quick and sort things out very quick and very effectively. Probably within a week, they could probably have taken over Moscow and removed all of the people that are causing problems and sold it as a liberation of a dictatorship and whatnot. They're not interested in doing that, And also, I've said this before, again, people might think this is crazy, but they've got vehicles, what we would call UFO type vehicles, flying vehicles that have got lasers that can blip in and out of reality, that can probably jump backwards and forwards in time, that can probably be controlled by your mind without your body actually going into the vehicle. They've got all of that shit. And yet again, if there was a real genuine threat, I think they would probably bust out the UFOs and deal with it. But this is not a real war. No war is real. It's all part of the whole... I don't know what the word is. The game they play here. It helps with their great reset and restructuring of the world. And it also reinforces the fear. Because a tank rolling down your street can be quite intimidating, no matter who you are. And if you get 100 men in uniforms with guns, and you brainwash them all to think that there's a deadly enemy somewhere, they are going to go around looking for a deadly enemy. And it's going to get to the point where they don't find a deadly enemy, that they'll create a deadly enemy, if you know what I'm saying. And it goes on and on and on. I mean, these fuckers, these secret unknowns, they know how the human mind works. They are masters of psychology, and they know how to get the masses to behave in a certain way. Tried and tested through and through. Anyway, I've ranted long enough now. I'm going to end it there. We live in a twilight world and there are no friends at dusk.